because they borrowed the profit and then basically disappeared.
Right.
And so everybody else got wiped out. Hey everyone, Kevin Amolsch, Pine Financial Group, where we work together so you succeed. If this is your first time seeing this video, be sure to hit subscribe and then hit the post notification button so you get notified anytime we have new content coming out on this channel. Today we're talking about maybe not the sexiest or most exciting topic, but it's something that's very important, especially for you private lenders out there. I have Travis Spear with me today. We're gonna talk about gap funding.
Yeah, gap funding, is interesting in our market and in real estate today. I mean, on paper, it sounds like a great strategy. You need to do a deal. You have a lender who will cover a certain percentage of what you need, and you need to bring in the rest of the money. So you go out and borrow it from someone else. That's often referred to as the gap, filling the difference between the amount of money you get from the first lender and covering that difference with the second lender, or sometimes three, and in some cases, four lenders. So we'll talk about that.
It gets scary, doesn't it? So to make sure the viewer is really clear on what this is, Travis, it's stacking debt. So let's say us as a hard money lender come in and finance the project, but there's a gap like you described. So they're gonna put another loan on top of it, another private money lender that's gonna be in a junior position to us. So if we foreclose, they get wiped off the title completely. So it's really taking a lot of risk, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely, especially from the lender standpoint. And oftentimes, someone who doesn't have enough money to fund the full deal will be interested in the gap. And the reason is because sometimes that borrower will be able to pay a little bit higher interest rate on that smaller amount of money. So the gap funder or lender in this scenario, they feel like they're getting a good return on their investment. But what they're missing is how much riskier it is to be in second, third, or in some cases, like I mentioned previously, fourth position, which we'll talk a little bit more about. And each position behind first becomes more and more risky, and they'll offer a higher rate for that.
Yeah, so let's talk about real briefly, then I want to get into this example that we've experienced here in Colorado. But a reason a lender would entertain this, it's really twofold. I think you did a good job explaining that, Travis, that you can get higher returns potentially than if you're working with someone like Pine Financial to invest your money, or if you're out there on your own in a first position, because a first position is rather safe. So the more risk sometimes will demand a higher return. So that's one. Two, I see this a lot. Investors don't have enough money to finance or fund an entire deal. So let's say it's a buy for $100,000, it's a $20,000 repair budget. So fix and flipper might want to borrow the $100 for the purchase and the $20 for the repairs. And if I only have $50,000 to put into the deal, I'm not able to do the full thing and not get into a first position.
Right.
So we see investors go into a junior position, not always chasing the high return, but just because they don't have the money to do the full thing,
Sure.
which is really scary, because that's when, if you do have a problem, you do have to foreclose, you don't have the money to take care of the first at all. So your money's 100% at risk. So should we talk about this one example quickly and then wrap this up?
Yeah, definitely. So this was a few years ago now. It was a deal that we funded in Colorado Springs, and the borrower came. It was actually a pretty good deal. We funded 100% of the purchase and the repairs. They might have a little bit of money to closing to cover the closing costs. But what we learned later, as the deal didn't go as planned and went into default, was that not only did they take the first loan from us, which covered just about 100% of their costs, they went out and took a second lien position, and then a third lien position, and ultimately a fourth lien position, borrowing money up to about 95% of what the appraised value was on this property when we made the loan on it.
Yeah, and we missed the value. Do you remember there was a barking dog next door, which you can't, how do you value that?
Sure. Not just barking, but aggressive.
There's an aggressive dog.
Type of neighbor that might have had some cars in the backyard and that kind of thing. And very challenging to value that on an appraisal.
Yeah, I mean, if the dog's not there when you show up, you have no idea. And then they're selling it, and there's an open house and this dog, and it brings the value of the property down. So we missed that.
Sure.
And so did she.
Right. And so the other, what ended up happening here is that the property went into default, the repairs weren't completed, and so here we are going through the foreclosure process. When at that time, we learned that there were initially two other liens put in place from a couple of other investors who were trying to get a big return on their investment. What we learned about the fourth lien holder later, and this was really sad, was that they actually borrowed the money from their mother or father who was in a retirement home with a goal of getting this 20% return on it. And it was the smallest amount. It might have been like 10 or 12,000 in fourth position. And not only did they not get the return they were promised, they ended up getting wiped out through the foreclosure process.
lost it all.
Yeah, and so this borrower who we made the loan to, and our investor ended up doing okay on the deal by the time we got it back and resold at retail. But everybody who was in second, third, and fourth position was wiped out. One of the loans actually initially started only about 25 or 30,000, and when the deal went into default, they thought they would come in and save it, so they started servicing the payments, which brought that lien or that loan amount up and up until they had every dime they had into it, and they just couldn't get it finishing on the market in time. And of course, we have to protect our investors because that's our business. And through the foreclosure process, these people got wiped out, and it was just a bad deal.
So we turned out okay, and who else turned out okay?
Yeah, of course, the borrower,
The investor,
who borrowed their
the real estate investor that borrowed all the money because they borrowed the profit and then basically disappeared.
right.
And so everybody else got wiped out. So I guess the moral of this video here is, if you're going to get into private lending, I encourage you to really understand what you're getting into. Always loan into a senior position. Don't get into this gap funding stuff. It's very risky. If it's at all confusing to you, I would suggest either not doing private lending or calling someone like Pine Financial who could help walk you through the process and keep you safe. Check us out, pinefinancialgroup.com.